Okay, we're ready.
You ready?
Everybody wants to
All
turn
right.
these on.
Here you go. I'll share.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Montrose Park and Recreation Commission, July 11th, 2022, 6 p.m. I'd like to have a motion to call to order.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call. Toby,
Aye.
Kayla,
Here.
Eddie,
Yep.
Michelle,
Yep.
Nicole, Dan. Okay. Next order is old business, or I'm sorry, gotta go back. Approval of the agenda. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion passes. Number 4, old business. Basically, we have none. Number 5, want to discuss and review the park shelter plan quote for a regional park and make recommendations to the city council.
Everybody have this?
So everybody's got a
Yep.
copy of what was up at the front desk. I'd like to open that up for discussion.
Jared, you can.
Yeah, I can, I can provide some background, so good evening, everybody. At the last park board meeting, some of the concepts were discussed relative to the park shelter, and I know there was some discussion related to some modifications for the park shelter building. So an update for everyone. The current estimate as part of the concept design is $810,000. This was put together. This is an estimate. I want to be clear. It's not a bid. It's an estimate just provided so that we can understand where we're at from a budget standpoint. The estimate was $810,000. As you all know, the city has a grant in the amount of $250,000. And that grant deadline is June 30th of 2023. But the DNR has indicated that they'd be willing to extend that as long as progress is shown to continue to move the project forward. There was a conversation that we did have with the DNR, and that was subsequent to the last park board meeting. Excuse me. The DNR will require, in order to be eligible for that grant, that the restrooms and shelter portion of the shelter project be constructed. So that is a requirement of the grant. Now, of course, since the grant amount is 250, the estimate is 810, and now we know that the restrooms and the shelter portion are required. We wanted to have a discussion with the park board and subsequently council regarding the future of the project. What everybody's thoughts are about whether or not it should move forward. Because now we have our marching orders, if you will, from the DNR as it relates to that application.
So when you say the shelter and the restrooms, are we talking without the kind of prep area, or is that part of it that's required as well?
No,
Just kind of the covered shelter and the restrooms that will be required?
the restrooms in the covered shelter area.
Okay.
So when this grant was approved back in, I think, February, we got the approval on it. And then you brought it to the park board last month. Why didn't you check with the DNR before that, before bringing us the first quote and all of that? Making
We
sure.
did, but they had not got back to us at that point.
When did you reach out to them?
I don't have the exact date, but I think the intent of the last meeting was to explore ideas for reducing costs, because at that point, due to the cost of materials and labor and all that stuff, the budget was higher than the estimate when the grant was put together. So
Who's doing the estimate? I forgot.
So I,
you hit the button on the side.
oh, this one. So when I got involved, I engaged a contractor to to test the budget, if you will, of the previous work. So I hired a company out of St. Cloud that I typically work with, or I've worked with quite a bit and trust them quite a bit, to do a budget based on those preliminary drawings. That's Bradbury Stam.
So this number that's here, excuse me, is the 685. This is the full plan like we initially looked at last time.
That's the drawings that we kind of went back
Yep.
to the original drawings, yep.
So being that we initially talked about cutting out everything and just having it be a freestanding shelter, which we can't do.
Right.
If we reduce everything on here, is that gonna change anything in any of the costs of for site development? With their site development, concrete, and engineering and administration, that's for the full, is any of that gonna change when we make these reductions?
I don't know.
Okay.
So these numbers here, these were
Those are your
my
estimates.
attempt to try to figure out ways to get this number down.
Right.
And if you can see, there used to be another option one, and that was to take all of
Yeah.
this stuff out. Subsequent to that meeting, we discovered that in fact wouldn't meet the grant requirements, so I just took that out. So these numbers would come off of that 685. The sewer and water, site concrete, and the fees, if you will, that's separate from these numbers, if that
So
makes
those
sense.
would still stay the same. So even if we reduced all of these things,
You aren't getting,
we'll be 120,000 over budget?
You're still looking for additional funding at that
Yes.
point.
So, I mean, we kind of just know that.
yeah.
Well, don't we have a budget with the city that they were allowing us that we could use to get it, at least get it started and then,
The additional 100,000 with the LGA?
yeah,
Is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
What's the LGA?
And that's just for the calendar year of 2022, right?
Right.
And then we can maybe dip in as we go along into the next years a little bit? Is that a possibility?
Well, every year the city has contributed 100,000 from the LGA to the regional park, except for like 3 years ago, when we put the money out towards the trail on 25.
When was the last time the city's contributed to the?
Last year? Oh, sorry, I'll go with you.
I don't know that money, I think my understanding is that money is more if we don't use it, we lose it type of thing. And not lose it, but it goes back into the general fund and it's kind of reallocated. And then every year it gets rebudgeted. I have to double check on that. Is that
We would have
accurate?
to,
The LGA portion.
The LGA portion, I'm not sure about.
What's LGA stand for?
Do you want to explain what the LGA is to them?
LGA is local government aid that is
Okay.
given to cities, from the state.
So what I understand is the last 3 years, it probably hasn't been there has been $100,000 contributed, but being it's not been utilized, it goes back to the general fund.
that 250, did that come from
That's-
that?
I don't know if that's true with the
You're saying
LGA. I guess I would have to double check with the LGA. All the most, other funds work that way, but the LGA might not work that way, Jess?
No, it doesn't.
So we would probably have to request that be
It's been
specially
an
allocated for
automatic.
this. Oh, it has,
In the previous years.
okay.
Yeah, and the 250 is separate.
The 250 was separate, that wasn't part of
So
that.
when does that
Correct.
100,000 get allocated? At the beginning of the year?
The be-
When
In the
LGA
budget,
gets approval.
The 100,000 gets allocated when we do budget, and we allocate that from our general levy. And then, if that money is not spent, as it has not been the last couple of years, because we've been saving it, it goes into the park development fund.
Is there any
so
part
then
of,
would we have that money available to us too?
Yes, but that money is, there's only like 250 to 300,000 in there right now.
Which covers the portion that we need to cover for the grant.
yes,
Correct.
Okay.
We had been building it up just to match the grant.
and when the DNR said that if we made substantial progress, or at least showed that we were making progress, they would possibly be willing to extend that deadline,
Which would push us,
what would they consider? Like, is it just a plan, or would we have to try to find out how to do this in stages or in order to get the project started?
Yeah, I anticipate that a plan would be satisfactory for that, and then a schedule submitted along with the plan.
have to get some bids.
Probably the footing and stuff.
What kind of extension do you really get? Cause you're looking at least another year before you finish.
This is not probably gonna be a fast process.
And that's talking being finished by that time, and if, even if with that extension, it would be June of 2024?
Or,
But finished, right?
Now, let's say you get 100, let's just spitball it, you get 100,000 for 22, you get 100,000 for 23, and 100,000 for 24. You're at 550 plus 250, you are still 100,000 short.
The other thing to keep in mind is, as it goes out,
And goes on.
the cost of the building is gonna go up.
Yeah.
So you'll be kind of chasing that number a little bit.
Yeah.
In general, that happens. I mean, we have some,
3 years ago, it was a $460
Uncommon.
and $70 project, $1,000 project.
we've been in some unusual times, so it's hard to
So if we
predict.
could get the
Don't assume it's gonna go down.
majority of it at least started, then we can see where our cost goes from there, because then we could see what our deadline is and work off that too.
You mean start part of like
The plans and stuff, so we can maybe, the sooner we can get at least the base or footings done for it.
So there's two things that we're trying to accomplish, is trying to understand where we are financially. If, how we accomplish what we're trying to do here. And then we're also trying to deal with the schedule issue. So on the original schedule, we were supposed to be done by June 30th of next year. The schedule I had laid out had us starting right now so that we were comfortable getting built by then. One of the things that the extension may do is if we can figure out the financial things, it may not be June 30th, it may be July 30th. If we start talking about extending it in another year, then it gets a little more complicated, I think, from a budgeting standpoint. Does that make sense? So there's sort of distinct issues that we have to address, yeah. The big one is the budget.
And the 250,000 that's in that LGA fund includes 2022.
Okay.
So moving forward, think about like it's not like another 100 grand that will get allocated in 2022, that's been allocated. So then you're talking about like 2025, I mean, just more information.
So you're talking really, we have 450 overall with the next 2 years.
By that deadline.
But if the deadline was a year later.
If we pushed it out a whole year, then it would be 450, matching theirs to be a total of 7.
Yep.
So it still would be short.
Which means either fundraising.
Or
And
cutting,
as a
making
city,
all
you
of these
really
cuts that are on here.
No.
we can't fundraise as a city.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, because we're part with the
You
city.
can't do sponsorship.
We can do sponsorship,
That's different, yeah.
No, you just can't go out and fundraise.
Okay.
yeah.
And it'd have to be in town locally, probably.
There's a couple.
Bolton and Mink. The big one,
They're here right now.
exactly.
To make it happen.
So if we cut all of these, if we did all of these cost reductions, that would take what, 190,000 about off?
80.
No, 80 is just for the reducing the shelter in half, correct?
Right, so
Which
one
would,
thing there's not gonna be, if we do the bathrooms and stuff.
Right, there's
And
not.
then we cut
cut it in
the
half.
shelter in
But-
half, there's not much of a shelter left. Does that
But
make
what
sense?
if we're getting
So
rid of that
if you
kitchen
look-
area?
I'm sorry. if we-
No, feel free.
Yeah, I just want to make
So
sure.
basically
So if we
with-
cut this in half,
the way,
there isn't much left of the shelter.
Well, I mean, if
Just-
we-
There's no point of it.
Yeah, I just want to make
So,
sure we're clear.
I don't have my,
So
No, I get what you're saying.
So if you draw a line here, and keep in mind, these are kind of swags, trying to understand it a little bit, but there wouldn't be a shelter left.
Do we
so-
have to have separate men's and women's restrooms? Is that a requirement of the DNR, do you think?
That I don't.
That's a good
so
question.
basically, our
One
best option is, right now with our budget, what we have is going with the bare bones minimum.
One restroom.
You'll
still
still have
have-
to come up with, figure out how to solve the financial picture.
So, well, if we're cutting that.
Even with the bare bones, you're still over budget.
Jared,
Yeah.
can we do like a family restroom instead of a men's and a women's? Can we reduce it down to one?
They basically said restrooms, and the original application had a men's and women's.
Are they handicap accessible as well?
They would have to be.
They would have to be?
Okay.
Had to be ADA compliant.
Are there any other questions, or?
I think our overall consensus last time was is that we didn't want a shelter that was half the size.
I agree.
Yeah.
So Jared, moving forward, if the council decides to not proceed, we obviously would lose the grant. What's the odds of going back and trying to get the grant again in a year or two?
I mean, I could speculate, but I don't know. Just based on my experience and with grant programs, if grants are
Would be good.
released by the applicant who requested it, that's,
And then give it up and go ahead and reapply, and it's
Right.
probably not gonna set well with DNR.
No, I wouldn't
Right.
think so.
And I think you got 250,000 guaranteed here, so you might as well try to do something with it. You gotta put something out there to make a statement. I think it's just, you know,
I don't disagree, but we don't have $800,000.
no, but
So-
that isn't, you know, we can just recommend, it's up to the city council to decide what they're gonna do.
So we would end
What
up
is
with,
this
if we
wood
had to
decking
wait
on
and
here
extend
with
it, we
the
wood end
wood-
up with
with the wood decking
450
part?
plus the
That was
250.
the underlayment.
We'd have to
No,
seven.
that would be a
On the
total.
roof, on the
Yeah.
ceiling.
Oh, with.
No, but plus the
with the
250
glue
from
that.
DNR.
Yeah, you'd be at
That
seven.
is,
You'd be
At
at seven
seven,
in
yes.
yes,
2024.
yes, I was thinking our
So
side,
if
yeah.
we
Obviously
cut
has to
all the
go.
rest of these things, we're at about seven.
Unfortunately.
But
Well,
I think what his
the more
point was
spending.
also, and I'm just saying, was that in
$5,000.
2024, those
It's gonna
costs
be
might be
more.
up
Right.
$70,000.
Yes,
They might
it's
not,
very
you know,
possible.
some of that could have,
You have to kind of assume.
still-
that
It's a market, you gotta play the market.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
go
Right.
serious,
Wouldn't
though.
go
Right.
to
But we also have to think.
$48,000
It's an
might be
estimate.
coming out.
We don't actually have a contract.
No, absolutely not.
We have to get a couple estimates.
We have to legally, you have to, yes.
So what are we gonna recommend? Eddie, your thoughts?
What different options do we have to choose from? What are, that we're just not doing the project at all?
No, I don't like
Which,
that option.
no, I don't
So,
think anybody does.
I know originally we wanted to get rid of option 3 just for a safety / vandalism
Yeah.
standpoint.
And if there's no kitchen, what do you need windows for? You don't need windows in a restaurant.
Well, I think it's gonna be a prep area, it ain't actually gonna be a kitchen, it's gonna be a prep area, right?
prep
It'd be
area.
just
Yeah,
like
but I
this.
mean, we wouldn't have that.
I think for sure we probably would have to get rid of option 1, 2, and 3.
If we did, we would be sitting right at the amount of money that we would have, so any increase in any cost would end up putting us over. So what happens when that happens? Can't stall the project and just leave it out there half-built.
Yeah, I mean, you really need to, I think Bradbury built in a little bit of a contingency, 5%. But what gets difficult on a small project, that 5% doesn't always, like if it's a $50 million project, 5%, that's a lot of money to pick up. But on a small project, it can get, it's $30,000. So something that goes awry could be really difficult. I don't want you to get into a difficult spot.
no.
So, but if we do go out for bids and we get a couple different bids, it could come in under the
It certainly
800,000.
could, right. So keep in mind, once again, as we said early when we started this, I sent this out to them. They're using this to to put numbers together. So they have to make a lot of assumptions. And keep in mind, I didn't do this
Right.
originally, so I can't always help get them through there, but they do the best they can with the information that they have. In general, they would be more conservative when they're doing that, but again, there's things that come up that you have to be prepared for.
So if we were to try to get some more specific bids, would that be considered part of this, we're making progress toward this? Or are they gonna want something like?
We'll need plans before we get more specific.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
But would that be something that the DNR would say, okay, well, this is at least, because there's no way we're gonna have this done by their deadline. We don't have the money to do
Well,
it.
from the sounds of it,
Well,
Or
if we
23.
get that extension,
Right.
yeah. we
from the
could,
sounds
but-
of it though, we bring it to the council and they say yes or no.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So I think what we gotta do is decide on these options, which we're gonna agree on. or disagree on, right? Make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council will decide from there. I think that's what we're meeting here for.
That's what it sounds like.
So I guess we should just go around, and do we just want to talk about each option, how we feel about it, and then make a recommendation to the city council from there? So, I don't know, option one, Eddie, are you?
I'm okay with getting rid of it.
Okay, how about you, Ed? Or no, I'm sorry.
Well, I can change
Yeah,
my-
Toby.
I can change my mind for that, it's
Yeah.
all right. I mean, yeah, I mean, overall, the only thing I don't wanna do is reduce the shelter.
Okay. All right, Kayla?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely okay with the three. I mean, and when it comes to reducing the shelter, I guess if we can't really reduce it, if we have to have the double bath, you know, the women's and men's restrooms.
Michelle, how do you feel about all three options?
I'm okay with eliminating. Obviously, we're not gonna reduce the size of it. I would like to see windows because it makes it look a little bit better. But for a vandalism point, I understand where they're coming from too.
We discussed it last time, eliminating glued lambs versus trusses. Could we go back? Wasn't there some talk about dressing those trusses up somehow, some way?
So if we were to do this, keep in mind, I don't know exactly what that means. I would go back and redesign it and try to make it look nice. I mean, you know, we would try to do something special here.
So if we redesign, what is that gonna cost us?
It's part of the
Say
fee
redesign.
estimate.
Oh, you mean from our sample? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just trying to get you to where you need to be.
Okay.
All right, so I'm in agreement. I think 1, 2, and 3, looks like the general consensus is from the commission here is that we're all in agreement of proposing 1, 2, and 3 be as part of the price reduction cost, and 4 is out the door. Well, it's not even an option.
So I'll make a motion that we, on option 1, 2, and 3, we get rid of them
To reduce costs.
to reduce cost.
I'll second that. You have to ask for more discussion.
What's that?
You have to ask for more discussion.
Any more discussion?
Dan, do you have any input as a public works guy?
Which one? What you're asking?
Well, no, we're looking at eliminating option 1, 2, and 3 and asking the council to proceed. Right?
With the shelter.
Correct.
Correct. You have the paperwork in front of you, Dan?
The only input I got is I agree with taking the windows out. They will get broken. I mean, vandalism, if you go with any kind of window, go with a glass block, maybe. Other than that, I'm fine with going back and whatever you guys decide.
Okay, so I just want to kind of readdress this, kind of sounds a little scary to me, Dan. So on the cost reduction options, there's 4 options, and the first one is to eliminate the glued lambs and then replace with wood trusses. The other one is eliminate stone cladding. The third option is eliminate windows, and the fourth one is reduce the shelter by half. But the commission is all on board and just proposing to reduce costs with the first 3 options, and we were just wondering what your input is on that.
All 3 of them. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Well, do we have Eddie? No?
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Toby?
Aye.
Kayla?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Looks like the budget's about $699.
What's that?
Yep, so if there weren't any increase,
What is that, 7?
it'd be okay.
What can we do as a city to increase that number?
The funding number, or what do you mean?
Get funding. Can we like send out sponsorship letters to?
I guess I'd have to look to see if the city has ever done that in the past. I'm sure that we have or could? I mean, there's obviously a process for that, right? You don't have to reinvent it, so you do
Right.
some research, figure out how they do that. We can look into that.
Okay.
Get the Chamber of Commerce involved in on that too, you know?
Yeah.
The city.
We just can't do, like I said, we can't. That we can find.
Who did that?
All right, we need a motion to adjourn, unless there's any other further discussion.
Is that all, what do we have that?
Is that all we have to give to the
That's
city
it,
council?
yep.
I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
I'll second.
All right, motion carries, meeting has ended.